Welcome guys, this is Adam and I'm here with Conley Woods for Pro Tour Journey into Nick. So Conley, how's it going?
Decently. I'm 9-4 right now. Got knocked out of top 8 contention a couple of rounds ago, but still fighting for some pro points and a little bit of cash, so we'll see what happens.
Okay. How do you like this block format so far?
I actually like it a lot. It's pretty diverse. Normally block formats tend to have like one very dominant deck or maybe two, but they generally tend to be the linear strategies that have been pushed via mechanics or whatever, like Tempered Steel or fairies, things like that. This format has pretty good mana, which allows a lot more diverse selection of decks, and there's not really a card that stands out into the level of like Sphinx's Revelation or something that's pushing you in a direction. So you can actually do quite a bit. There's a lot of aggressive decks in the room, a lot of mid-range decks. I happen to be playing kind of a hybrid mid-range control deck in Junk Constellation.
Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting. I played against 6 different decks in 7 rounds at this point. So.
Yeah, it seems like the field has, you can go anywhere from the aggro builds to, like you said, the control, the mid-range builds. How do you like the draft format?
Quite a bit, actually. Journey made it, I would, like 10 times better. Like, I was not a huge fan of, Triple Theros was okay. It was, build a big monster. That's fun for a while. It's kind of Rise of Eldrazi feeling. I wasn't a huge fan of Born of the Gods being introduced. It just kind of, it made the strategies you typically drafted worse, and it didn't really introduce a lot of interesting new strategies. Like, it made the mono black deck worse, etc. So I wasn't a huge fan of it. But Journey it opens the format up a lot. The fact that there's only one set of bestow creatures at uncommon means that there's less build up a monster, and now you have your option of I could build up a monster, I could go diversify via like an aggressive red-white strategy, I could be like a tempo-y blue-green deck. There's all kinds of cool stuff you could do. It's not as deep as like some like Innistrad, but I'm still enjoying it quite a bit.
Okay, perfect. And you mentioned you were doing some testing beforehand out in Douglasville. What time, or when did you guys get in? And
got there on Sunday. Came straight from Grand Prix, Minneapolis.
Okay.
So that was the earliest I could get there. Some of the team was out a day or two earlier. And then just hampered down. Tested with this deck in particular. I was pretty gung-ho on it from like the beginning, like Monday or Sunday or whatever. I was already like very set on like this deck is the nuts. So I tested a ton of games, probably 300 or so games over the course of the week, just me alone. And then that's not even including like watching other people play or talking to theory, etc. So I felt really good about it. I convinced most of the team to play it towards the end of the week. We had a couple people diverge. Craig Wesco decided to play a white weenie deck, who would have thought. Shaheen played an Esper deck, who would have thought. And then the rest of the team basically played this deck. So we had 12 people on it. Nobody's like right now in top 8 contention. We had some rough drafts. But we have a lot of like X4s, a lot of people in my top 16, top 32. So we're still poised to have a reasonable Pro Tour even without any marquee finishes. But it is what it is.
That's always good.
Yeah.
You seem like you were pretty set on this junk deck. What kind of made you stick with that and say this is the one?
Well, it's just the inherent synergy. So it just outlasts every deck. It has inevitability basically over every single deck in the format, because over time you draw so many cards. You have more card advantage than literally anything. Crewfix's Insights a draw 3 for 3. Eidolon of Blossoms is a draw X for 4. And then you have things like Brain Maggot stealing their cards, Doomwake Giant wrapping their board. Everything just generates this card advantage. Courser playing lands off the top. And then eventually you just get to this point where you're wrapping their board every single turn, no matter how big their creatures are, because you have so many enchantments in your deck. Doomwake Giant is not just a -1/-1 effect in this deck. It's often -4, -4, -5, -5. And then you get something like Whip or Freak active, and you're just making more snakes, triggering that more, or gaining a bunch of life. The deck completely goes off, basically against everybody. The only problem cards really are Stormbreath Dragon, Polish Crusher, and Ashiok. Those are like the 3 problem cards. You can deal with them all. I mean, there's Silence Believers, Heroes, Downfall, etc. in the deck. But they're a little bit tougher because there's 4 Banishing Lights on our list, so the Polish Crusher and Stormbreath Dragon naturally have some protection against that. And then Ashiok's just annoying because she comes down early enough to where we don't really have board pressure to kill it. So if we don't have one of our Banishing Lights or Heroes Downfall right away, it can get out of hand. Like it steals a Courser and then puts that in play, and now they're getting a huge advantage off that. Or it steals an Eidolon of Blossoms, and even though they don't get to draw a bunch of cards off it, just drawing 1 or 2 is pretty good. So those are really the problem cards, and outside of that, I basically would play against any single deck in the format.
Have you lost to Ashiok?
I did not lose to Ashiok. My only loss in Constructed was to a blue-black. I guess that person did have Ashiok. I didn't lose to the Ashiok. Blue-black Inspire, I guess, and Daring Thieves and the King Midas and all that stuff. and I'm pretty sure it's a very favorable matchup, but some awkward things happened where I was in a commanding position with a Doomwake Giant just wrath his board, and he was at 4 life, so I just need 1 more attack. So he's got 1 turn. I know his hands isn't a null, so he has to either top deck a creature to chump or he's dead. And he top decks a creature, but it's a Prognostic Sphinx, which doesn't have to chump. Yeah. And I had Freak in my hand, but I know he has the null, so I can't trigger my Doomwake yet. So I just have to draw any enchantment, and the game's over. Miss for 4 more turns, and then like by the time I hit an enchantment, he had a second null, and he got back in the game and won. So it's kind of a heartbreaking loss. And then I lost to Naya, which is a reasonable deck to lose to just because of the Storm Breath and Pulse Crusher. Yeah. You can beat most of their average draws, but if they have 4 or 5 of those cards combined, it could be tough.
Tough matchup. So you're here for this weekend. Are you going to be here next weekend for the Grand Prix in Atlanta?
I will. I'm flying back home for work for 3 or 4 days, and then flying back out. Right so back. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So quick trips.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you get some time to enjoy it here while you are.
Yeah.
And good luck with your matches.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.